Okay. Mr. Collins, if you'll call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor. Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Commissioner Dawson,
Present.
Mr. Lucas,
Present.
Vice Mayor Anderson,
Present.
Mayor Rainey.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mayor.
The special meeting is called to order. Commissioner Lucas, would you do our prayer and pledge, please?
You bow your heads. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this evening. We thank you for this opportunity we have to come together and discuss matters of the city. Pray that you be with each of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Collins, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Lucas,
Aye.
Commissioner Butler,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Mayor Rainey.
Aye.
Motion carries, Mayor.
Thank you. There are no public hearings. Any citizen comments?
No, Mayor, no one signed up.
Public announcements, there are none of those. Staff comments and monthly reports, of course, we will not do tonight. Consent agenda, we do not have that. There's no old business. Our only item of new business, 11A, Board of Commissioners discussion regarding fireworks ordinance violations and discussion regarding the possible filing of injunctions against violators of the ordinance. Mr. Collins, has there been any, other than the City of Fairview's violation, has there been any other violations?
Mayor, I'm not aware of any. We've not issued any citations.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mayor. So if there was no citation delivered, how did we pay for breaking the ordinance?
Commissioner Dawson, I paid, and I can explain to you how that is there, and we will violate it. And I can be specific as to how I arrived at that. I placed it before each of you a copy of the ordinance. At the bottom of the page, it's very, very clear on page 1, where it says the City of Fairview Municipal Code, Title 7, Chapter 5, Section 7-503A is hereby amended to read as follows. And it reads, "It shall be unlawful for any person other than a person who is a member of a registered nonprofit organization identified in Section 7503B below, which the city is not, to sell, store, offer for sale, ship, or cause to be shipped into the City of Fairview, except as here provided for any item of fireworks, et cetera, et cetera." I can read the remainder of that, but that's the part that applies.
No need to read the rest.
So with that, I am the city manager is also the purchasing agent for the City of Fairview. And for us to proceed with the purchase of the fireworks for the city's July 3rd event, there's a requirement that they be shipped. And they also obviously have to be brought in, so we would have two issues of concern specific to the verbiage of the ordinance. The first is causing to be shipped. So the completion of that order and directing someone to ship those in will be a violation of this ordinance as it's written, as it would be a violation for the person who shipped those. So there's no exclusion within the ordinance for the city, and it's very clear in the first portion of the sentence that it shall be unlawful for any person. So that's how I arrived at that.
Did you seek legal counsel before you came to that conclusion?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there a reason that you did not?
Commissioner Dawson, in my estimation, the verbiage is clear. And that's why I didn't.
Okay. The reason I ask, you sent an email to us basically stating what you just said, and then you listed out 4 things, basically 4 things that we would have to do because you felt that we broke the ordinance. One was I can violate the ordinance by having the fireworks shipped in, pay my $50 fine, and then fine our fireworks vendor $50 for unlawfully shipping the fireworks into the city. Number 2, the Board of Commissioners can call a special meeting to repeal the ordinance 2021-11 so we can legally have our fireworks shipped in. Number 3, the Board of Commissioners can call a special meeting to pass a resolution to request that I violate ordinance 2021 by having fireworks shipped into the city, waive my $50 fine, and then waive the shipper's $50 fine. And then the fourth option you gave us was to adhere to the ordinance and don't have the fireworks for the July 3rd event. That's what you sent out to us, and at that point, that was 6/20/21. Without any information coming back to you on 6/21/21, you sent an email to us stating that you deposited funds for violating fireworks ordinance.
Yes, sir?
Now, in the same email on 6/20/21, you said, I am completely uncomfortable with remedy number one, which is I can violate the ordinance by having the fireworks shipped in, pay my $50 fine, and then fine our fireworks vendor $50 for unlawfully shipping the fireworks into the city. Where was your change of heart at that point?
There was, and I'm still uncomfortable with it. But I believe, sir, that in reading this as it's written, and it was made very clear at the BOC meeting on the 17th that this ordinance was to be followed to the letter.
Okay.
I believed that's what I did.
So, once again, you said with number one, I can violate the ordinance by having the fireworks shipped in, which is the case, correct?
Yes, sir?
Pay my $50 fine, and then fine our fireworks vendor $50 for unlawfully shipping the fireworks into the city,
Yes, sir?
correct? In the paragraph at the end, you said, I am completely uncomfortable with remedy number one, which is the one I just read.
Yes, sir?
What was your change of heart?
I didn't have a change of heart, sir. I'm still uncomfortable with doing that, but I believe in order for us to comply with the ordinance, some action needed to be taken, and that's what I took.
Okay. So you were uncomfortable with that decision and decided not to seek legal counsel?
Commissioner Dawson, in my estimation, this is clear. I'm not sure.
It's just the question. You felt uncomfortable, you were not really sure, so you decided to go ahead and pay the fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Potter, my question to you is, did the city violate this ordinance, the fireworks, the fireworks sales ordinance? The premise of this fireworks ordinance, as I drafted, we looked at together, and then the BOC voted on, was for the sale of fireworks only. In your legal opinion, in Tim Potter's, our lawyer's legal opinion, did the city violate with shipping fireworks in for the July 3rd event?
Commissioner Dawson, I've communicated that I believe that the city is not in violation. And here's why. Title VII, Chapter 5 of the municipal code that we're amending states that it is to provide for the use of certain fireworks for private use, to regulate the private sale and use of fireworks. And so that's what we're amending, is Title V, Chapter 7. So that's my opinion. Now, in retrospect, in order to have avoided some of this confusion, language could have been added to the ordinance that said, not to restrict public use or government use or something. We could have come up with a sentence that would have been added to that ordinance. That's just not something that we considered or discussed at the time that we drafted the ordinance. And as I also said, I think that Mr. Collins' interpretation is one that some people might have of it, and he was, I think, erring on the side of caution by paying the fine and saying, I don't want to do something inappropriate, so I respect his opinion about it. But I would argue, as an attorney, that the whole intent of the ordinance was to regulate the private sale, storage, distribution of fireworks. Wasn't intended to restrict the city's fireworks show that we have on the 3rd of July every year, or 4th of July. But that's the best I can answer that question.
Right. That's pretty clear to me, that our legal counsel says that it is not a violation, so there is no ordinance that was broken.
So to be clear, just so I can, would it be possible to have this paragraph be reread, and for clarification, be explained to me the part that I misread?
You can. I believe that our lawyer knows that crystal clear, though. He's the one that assisted with creating this document. And his legal opinion says that the ordinance was not violated. And when we start talking about what we make a decision on or when an ordinance is violated, Mr. Collins, of course, we revert back to our legal counsel. As the BOC, we should be reverting back to our legal counsel, somebody that's going to be defending us in the court of law if somebody does challenge us on this. So I would have to side with Mr. Potter on his interpretation of this ordinance.
Okay, so
So
I would respectfully request just to understand what part of "it shall be unlawful for any person" is not clear.
yeah.
Potter?
Yeah, I think that I understand, I respect how you're reading this, and I think that one could read it that way, and I think that a lawyer could argue it that way. I've been asked to give my opinion about it, and my opinion is that the entire code section that is being amended pertains to the sale and the regulation of the private sale and use of fireworks in the city of Fairview. So now if we take though this language without looking at the totality of the code section, I agree with Mr. Collins. When you read the language there, it shall be unlawful for any person other than a person who's a member of a registered nonprofit. And I think what Mr. Collins' position is that the city is not a registered nonprofit, correct, Mr. Collins? So, but we could fix it prospectively. I don't think that it should have any bearing on the city's ability to proceed on July the 3rd with its fireworks show. I don't think that is something that we should be concerned about. But I think that prospectively, to clear up this same interpretation that Mr. Collins has, we could amend this ordinance just by exempting the city. If we wanted to do that, I think that would be, prudent, might be belt and suspenders. But I don't think that, I don't think that Mr. Collins should have to pay a fine to the city.
Right.
I have a question as to the point of order. Can we even be discussing amending this ordinance during this meeting,
We
this
can.
special call meeting?
We can, because we've
Okay.
given notice to talk about.
Okay,
It's pretty broadly interpreted as long as we're sticking to the parameters of the fireworks ordinance is the reason for this meeting, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm good. For any other discussion?
I would just like to say, I think that everybody's acting in good faith here. I think Mr. Collins is acting in good faith here. He's just trying to be very strict about the way he's interpreting the language of this, and I appreciate that because he doesn't want to violate the language of the ordinance or his belief that it's intended to be interpreted very strictly.
Mr. Potter, with all due respect, I was suspicioned at the last meeting of engaging in some behind-the-scenes illegal, improper, immoral activity relating to somehow or another my family being involved in some fireworks issue with the city. And it was made very clear to me by this body that this ordinance was to be followed to the letter. And there's been no discussion in this meeting that states I did otherwise.
Mr. Collins, I completely understand. If there was a question, though, in your mind, which it seemed with this email, you were kind of teeter-tottering there to say, I want to do the right thing, it would have been prudent to seek legal counsel with this situation. My question is this: with the admission of guilt that you said that you breached or violated this ordinance, it puts us in a very precarious situation now where we have to make a decision, or we had to make a decision with one of these four things here, which I felt was inappropriate. If there is not a breach or a violation of the ordinance, then we don't have to pick 1 through 4 with that situation. So if there is not a violation of the ordinance, I say we go as is with the fireworks, and we do look at maybe rewriting that ordinance so it is more crystal clear for in the future.
Completely agree. That's why I went through the effort to do what was done. There was no intent not to do that. The entire discussion was the language of the ordinance and how are we there. Any outside opportunity for not that, clearly, if that was the case, then I wouldn't have taken the action to ensure that we were operating within the regulations.
One other question that I have, and I don't know if this is allowed, Mr. Potter, but when we start talking about, in this case, you actually paying out of pocket for a violation of the ordinance, is that setting a precedence now for any city employee if they violate an ordinance where they're going to have to pay out of pocket?
No, sir, I would be the one that, clearly we don't do that. But again, I believed I was in a situation where clearly adhering to the ordinance, there was going to have to be some action taken. I believe that was the best uncomfortable action that could be taken.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Any other discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
What I'm happy to do is come up with some proposed clarification language and just circulate it to the members of the commission that we can deal with at a later date.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Vice Mayor?
I really feel like moving forward, if any question at all of an ordinance comes about or any decision to pay a fine or do something against an ordinance or something like that, it should never be any city employee or one of us making the decision without first going and seeking legal counsel from Mr. Potter. That needs to be done, period. And I think all of this could have been resolved before having to come to this meeting.
I would like to say that when Mr. Collins sent that email, my response email was, when is the soonest we could have a meeting to discuss that? I believe my email question was, is Wednesday the earliest that we could meet? I think I discovered then that Mr. Butler and Mr. Dawson were out of town.
As was I in Chattanooga.
Well, let me finish. And so you immediately responded and said that you would not agree to a meeting unless Mr. Butler and Mr. Dawson were here, which automatically gave us no quorum to even discuss what we needed to do as a city about making sure we could get fireworks in here. I had not mentioned, you had said later in an email that there would be some days you would be out of town. At that point in time, I had not mentioned a day that we could meet, just asking if Wednesday was the quickest time we could meet. So some of this could have been avoided, I think, with Mr. Collins having to pay a fine or feeling like he was having to violate an ordinance if we could have met last week. So that was not doable. I think that Mr. Collins is translating the ordinance in the most strict way to make sure there was absolutely no issues. And I appreciate that. So is there any other discussion?
Mayor?
Uh-huh.
I don't think that any one of us should ever make any decisions about an ordinance or about paying fines or anything like that without seeking legal counsel from our attorney. We should not have meetings to discuss it or anything like that until Mr. Potter has been asked to interpret where we should see if there should even be a meeting or not.
Vice Mayor, I think that when Mr. Potter warned us that we were all getting ready to violate this, that we need to be careful about our email conversations, that for us to have a meeting with Mr. Potter present was the time to openly discuss the problems we had encountered with the fireworks for the city. Not the email conversations, but to be completely and totally transparent, to have a special meeting with the attorney here to ask the questions just like we're doing tonight. I think that is the only time that we should really question our city attorney about any ordinances that we have, not during email conversations that the public does not know about.
Mayor?
Well, and certainly I'll say, and I've always said this, individually, any of you have the right to call me.
That's right.
I work for the city, so if Commissioner Lucas or Commissioner Dawson or Commissioner Anderson want to call me up and say, can I have a conversation with you, I'll have it. Now, I mean, it gets a little wonky if, for lack of a better term, if hypothetically, 5 commissioners call the city attorney and want the city attorney to draft an ordinance, and with 5 different ways, you know? I've drafted ordinances, the way Fairview's typically done practice is the city manager has done drafts and sent them to me for review, and that's what I've been doing. I think that saves the city money, for one thing. Different cities do it different ways, but I'm happy to do it, but in this particular case, Commissioner Dawson's the only one that reached out, so I didn't hear from anyone else saying, hey, I could have just as easily gotten a call from a commissioner saying, I would like an ordinance that said that anyone can have a permit. I would have done it, and we could have submitted it, because I don't make legislative decisions. I draft it in a way I think is legal, but it's not my job to advise on policy. I don't do that. I try to not do that. But yes, in answer to Commissioner Anderson's statement, you could call me, anyone could call me directly. I'll give you my very best opinion.
When I first became a commissioner, I was told that we could reach out to Mr. Potter. There's no violation in us individually reaching out to Mr. Potter to ask a question or get an answer on something we might need to interpret. Also, I was told when I respond on our email that we talk back and forth that I was to respond, reply to all. So if that's not the case, then I need to be told differently, because I was told when I was first elected and sworn in, when I replied to something and I replied to an individual, it needs to be reply to all. So that needs to be clarified if I don't need to be doing that.
I think that that is what we all do. I think Mr. Potter's warning email to us last week was that we were getting very close to discussing, I'll let you.
Mayor, just as a follow-up, and I understand that conversation, but the reply to all specifically conversation was a part of when an individual, a citizen, reaches out to board members and asks a question about a certain thing, a storm drain issue, speeding on an issue, some other thing. When they reach out, if whoever from the board is replying could reply all, so we can all see the information that goes back and forth, rather than all 5 of you having to reply to the same person and share information back and forth. It's easier in that instance if whoever replies just replies all, so we can all follow up in that manner. That was the primary discussion that was had for that. It was simply an exercise in making sure that all of you are up to speed on whatever reply would be, and then the staff and I can go back and make sure we follow up. So that's the primary purpose for that discussion.
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, I mean, we've had executive meetings about this before. I'm happy to do it again, but I think it's fine when the entire legislative body replies all on an issue such as who's available on Thursday night, or what is everybody want to be there, or something that doesn't. It gets gray and it gets ambiguous, but it gets close to being argued that it violates a Open Meetings Act violation if the discussion looks like a deliberation. If it looks like people are saying, well, I like option A, well, I like option B, now you're deliberating. Now you're discussing the facts of something. And, deliberation, you kind of know it when you see it, but I don't think we were there. I don't think we were doing that. I was just I just don't want to go there, okay? We can have robust debate like this in a open meeting, but I think it's fine, though, to reply all for factual things like who can make it to the workshop, does anybody have a problem with us putting such and such on the agenda? Okay, that's not really a deliberation, right? That's just saying I want item XYZ on the agenda. But I'm for XYZ. What do you guys say? That's a deliberation. And you can't do it. I wish you could do it sometimes because I think that it's a little, we've gone kind of, that's my personal opinion, we've gone down a rabbit hole with these, with this law a little bit, but you can't do it. You can't deliberate by email unless the public is weighing in. So I'm gonna always say that, or try to always say, hey, yo, let's stop. But
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, so I guess we need to figure out what type of action, if any, that needs to happen tonight. And if there is no violation of the ordinance, is that money to be paid back to Mr. Collins from the city? So that we can, as a city, say there was no violation of the ordinance?
I think that would require a motion and a second to refund Mr. Collins' money. I mean, that was a question.
I don't know that yeah, I guess it's already been paid into the city, so yes, it would.
Okay. I would like to make that motion then for the city of Fairview to repay the money received from the thought that there was a technical violation, that money to be paid back to Scott Collins.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Collins, will you call the roll, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mayor Rainey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so,
But Mayor, I'm assuming one of the original stated reasons for this meeting was to discuss whether or not to file an injunctive action. As I said earlier, it seems like that's sort of moot. I'm not aware of any entity against whom to do that. So I will not be doing that unless someone gives me a direction to do something.
okay. So can we give you direction to add language to this ordinance to clarify so this will not happen?
You don't have to do that. I'll do that and circulate it, and you can act accordingly.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.